Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, a.k.a. PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative podcast here on Blab. As always, I'm your host, Peter Remoliotis, and on Twitter I go as PD Beats. This is the podcast where we have digital dialogues from the worlds of social media, sports, and entertainment and pop culture. We have a really cool show for you about public relations and social media and sports. But very quickly, before I introduce the panel, I would just like to send out my thoughts and prayers to everyone dealing with the Fort McMurray fires in Fort McMurray, Alberta. Our hearts are going out to all of you. This is a really tragic and awful situation. If you would like to help, please contact the Red Cross Canada and donate, because Fort McMurray really needs your help. So I just wanted to quickly get that out of there. So I'll get that out there. So I want to quickly introduce the panel. First, we have the Public Relations Director in the NWHL. We have Jenny Scrivens is with us. Jenny, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
No problem. We then have a reporter from TSN. He covers the Ottawa Senators and is from Ottawa. We have Brent Wallace with us. Brent, welcome to the show.
Hey, everybody.
And we have, last but not least, of course,
I would debate that. I would say definitely least.
We have Senior Manager of Social Media for Fox Sports, Pat Muldowney, is with us on Popternative. Pat, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
So this is the time, very quickly, before we get into all the discussions, where I have the panel introduce themselves to our viewers. So, Brent, let's start with you. Some opening remarks.
Oh, jeez. What do you want from me, Peter?
On the spot there already.
Wow.
Putting you on the spot. Just
what do you want to know?
And introduce yourselves briefly. Give me the elevator pitch of Brent Wallace.
Started in Halifax, Nova Scotia, went to Montreal for a year, and I've been the TSN bureau reporter for the last 18 years in Ottawa, and I also do some hosting of SportsCenter occasionally and whatever else they need me to do.
Ah, pretty cool. Jenny, what about you?
So I am with the NWHL right now. I was a player and a PR representative, so I don't know, maybe the first time someone's ever worked for the league and played in the league at the same time.
That's interesting.
Chris Pronger.
Was that true? Okay, so I'm the second. I don't know. Maybe it's not as great as I thought. But I had a blast, and it was the inaugural year of the NWHL, and I'm really proud of the strides that we made last year.
Great. And Pat, again, last but not least.
Born and raised in Pittsburgh. So glad we're sneaking this in at the beginning of the first intermission of the Pens game. So spent most of my life in Western Pennsylvania. Spent almost 7 years at ESPN working in production and operations. Moved out to LA to work at Fox Sports at the launch of FS1. Started with Fox Sports Live with Jay Onrait and Dan O'Toole, and have since moved into a more general social media role here.
Very cool. And Andy Perelman, the new media manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins, was actually on Popternative. So
nice.
We, of course, wish the Pittsburgh Penguins best of luck in that series. And very quickly, before we get into it, I just want to say, I have to say it, it is May 4th, so it is Star Wars Day, so I had to bring out Dark. So may the 4th be with you all. I have to plug that in.
Actually,
Star Wars yes.
I bought it at Disney. I went to Disneyland as an adult for the first time like 2 weeks ago and bought this shirt.
How was it?
Oh, I'm 7 years old. It was amazing. I had a blast.
That's good. So Popternative is a social media centric show, and the one thing I really wanted to talk about was we have, Jenny, who works in public relations, and we have Pat, who has a lot of experience in social media and sports, and Brent, who's been a reporter at TSN. I just thought it was really interesting because when you think of public relations and you think of this concept of athletes or musicians or celebrities having publicists or people that are doing media relations, you think of, okay, the publicist is going to help out with all the promotion and the press releases and website base and the fan clubs. But now social media has added a completely new dimension to that. The players have their own means where they can tweet out things right away. Some situations, maybe the PR team maybe doesn't even know about it, which could become like a PR nightmare. So I just wanted to go around and, Jenny, we can start with you, but what have you noticed?
What's a PR nightmare? I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Johnny Manziel. That would be a PR nightmare.
What do you think about this new dimension that's come in, the social media part of public relations? It's changed a lot of things, right?
It's absolutely changed the game, but I have to be honest, I haven't been in the game without social media, so I don't really know what it was like before. But second of all, I think the thing that was the coolest about my job this year was that I was in the locker room, I was a teammate, I was with all of the athletes, and I got to give them that sort of firsthand experience and be a sounding board for them and use my PR experience to my advantage because, we'd be getting dressed for practice and one of my teammates would say, hey, Jenny, I have this tweet I want to send out. What do you think? Or, Jenny, I'm new to New York. I really want to leverage my brand. How do I do that? So they were able to tap into my, experience, if you want to call it, as a teammate and as someone that they were really comfortable speaking with, as opposed to me being locked away in some tall office building and never even meeting the players. So that was something that I loved about being a player and a PR person this year.
No, that is really interesting. It's almost like you're almost like a hybrid, like the PR and the hockey. It's like, that's awesome.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think cool. It helped a lot, and I think it eased a lot of people into taking steps forward to creating their own brand. And, I think we were very fortunate this year. The players in the league are all incredible, and we didn't really have any missteps, I would say, with social media. But I know it can happen, and we're prepared, but we really want to give them that opportunity to take those first steps and take a chance and be themselves on social media. I'm prepared for a few hiccups, but I think that overall it'll be a good step forward for the league.
Mm-hmm. Pat, you with being with Fox Sports and a lot of the almost most of the content that is created for the Fox Sports social media channels is about the teams, but focus on the athletes as well. There's a lot of content about that. What from being someone like you who oversees all this content, what do you think about this whole landscape now of public relations in the sports and entertainment industry?
Like you said, it's changed. I mean, the automatic comparison I always go to is in the basketball world, where it doesn't matter what any player accomplishes. They're always going to just be compared to not being as good as Michael Jordan. But then you look at the way that LeBron James is criticized, no matter what he does, he could open, he could donate $1 billion and people would say, well, Jordan would have donated $2 billion. And the thing is, the worst thing anybody can say about LeBron James in this social media era, in this over-scrutinized public relations era, is that he left Cleveland a terrible way the first time. Nothing has ever come out about LeBron. He's never been, there's never been photographs on Twitter. He's never, accidentally posted something to Instagram. When you look at the stories back that Michael Jordan, through his playing days, he'd be supposedly in Atlantic City till 5 a.m. the night before he played the Knicks. And you can't do that now. That would have been everywhere. Could you imagine if LeBron James was out at a casino until 5 a.m. the night before his game? So I think there's a lot more pressure on athletes now than there ever has been in the history of the world. You talk about I know Brent mentioned Johnny Manziel. We might not even know the issues that Johnny Manziel's having had this been 15 years ago. But now everything's on TMZ the second it happens.
Yeah.
And see, that's part of the issue. We think that being available to all social media is a good thing. I think it's made people more superficial more than anything, because I covered back in the day when there wasn't any social media, and the stories you would know about guys. I mean, I can remember being out with some players and we would come back at the hotel like 5 a.m. And so you can't do any of that stuff anymore. It's really taken the players and put them inside a bubble. Have you ever heard anything about Sidney Crosby? Ever? No, nothing, right? It's so guarded now. I can remember I was in Slovakia World Championships. It was, 5-6 years ago. And I was on my phone. It's 3 a.m, but we're all in the bar. So Team USA's there, Team Canada's there. and there was someone from Team USA that grabbed me and goes, "Are you tweeting this?" And I'm like, no, I'm just relax. I'm not. And another player was, I'm like, "No, guys, it's 3 a.m. I don't care." So that stuff now, it doesn't happen anymore. The players don't socialize. They don't hang around the locker rooms. They get out and they do their own thing.
That's my favorite line. One of my favorite Popternative lines ever. "Guys, it's 3 a.m. I don't care."
I told that to players. I'm like, if I see you in a bar, I don't care what you do. If you're not playing that night and you're not on an ice surface or you're not in a uniform, I don't care. I'm not about to report that you were drinking in a bar. It's none of my business, to be quite honest. In Nashville this year, people were tweeting that Dylan Larkin was out on Broadway. Well, Dylan Larkin is 19, so he's not allowed to drink. Is that really necessary? Do we need to report that? I don't understand. If we're going to continue to do all this social media, then people aren't going to be able to get in touch with these players at all.
Well, we can promise whoever else was out getting hammered on Broadway in Nashville at 2 a.m, they certainly never drank when they were 19. So I'm sure we can be positive about that.
Exactly.
So, Jenny, I have to bring this up because we're talking about the athletes and everything. You are married to a professional hockey player. You're married to Ben Scrivens. And
yes.
Yeah, sorry, I was waiting for you to say yes. I agree, but do you I'm sure. So Ben Scrivens is really interesting because I remember when he got traded to Edmonton. I remember he was, I believe, using Vine a lot. I think he was using one of the social media platforms a lot. I think it was Vine or Instagram.
Yeah, it was Vine.
Yeah, it was Vine. And he was developing a big following on that. And because he was doing a lot of, funny stuff that you would not necessarily see as much, because there is I've talked to a lot of athletes. There is a fear of sending out stuff. And you can also comment on yourself too, because you're playing, you're a professional hockey player as well. Do you find though that fear, will that fear ever leave? Probably the answer is no, right? There's always going to be that reluctancy to tweet something out or post something that someone's going to comment and scrutinize on.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you put yourself out there as an athlete, you open the door to criticism, and people will criticize just for the sake of criticizing. I mean, it could be a harmless vine of our dog, and people will. I've seen comments on Ben's stuff that says, "Okay, why are you doing this? You should be training," or "You're terrible. Get back in the gym." And it's like, it's a summer day and, it couldn't be any more off base. So I think there is always that fear, but I think Ben's really branded himself as someone who's a little off the beaten path, and he doesn't really, I don't want to say he doesn't care, but, he doesn't depend on other people's feedback to tell him that he's the norm or that he's doing something right.
I'm not married to him, so I will say he doesn't care. I've never met Ben, but 2 years ago in the postseason, when I was handling social media for Fox Sports Live, Julie Stewart-Binks got me in touch with him, and he's obviously one of the most conversational and easy to get along with, seemingly, professional athletes that you're going to find. So he was so cool about it. He was like, yeah, because we're trying to build a hockey following. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. Whatever. It's cool. He's like,
was that the Twitter takeover he did?
It was. So
yeah, that was fun.
He did the Twitter takeover with Fox Sports Live, and it's going great. We're talking hockey. He's going back and forth. The fans are having a blast with it. Having that access is a thing that, that's the good side of all of the social media and the way that everything is now, because you can actually talk to these athletes first person. But then, of course, there's other people that see it as an opportunity. So people start firing away, asking them about gun control and really taking into a political direction. And that was the thing that I loved about him. So Pat Muldowney, the person, was like, this is amazing because he doesn't care. He was totally honest about his opinions and his thoughts and his political beliefs and where he stands. And, he should be. You should be who you are, regardless of whether you're saying it on Twitter, saying it in the street, saying it to your friends and family. Then the social media guy, Pat Muldowney, was like, oh, my God, I'm going to get fired. Oh, my God, I'm going to get fired. Because he starts tweeting about gun control. And then you can understand what the internet does. People obviously take it to extremes. And they're like, oh, you're going to take away. It's a runaway train. But it was an excellent experience. And, it was just so refreshing for me because it didn't matter. Just being able to see what people were saying back to him and everything that he was commenting on. He never lost his cool. He never got mad. He's like, look, this is just what I think. This is just who I am as a person.
That's why they call him Professor.
It's
one
true.
of the reasons. He loves to talk about things he knows, and politics is definitely up there, although we kind of try and shy away from that as much as we can, I think. I mean, at some stage, I think it can only get him in trouble, but on the other hand, I think that it is refreshing. I think you're right. It's fun for athletes to be able to speak their mind and to talk about things they're passionate about and not just about, forechecking and back-checking and lines. And, I mean, yeah, that's fun, but I think that in today's age, we want to get to know athletes as people, and I love that social media gives us that access.
See, I still think at times it makes you not want to be like Ben is with saying everything about gun control, right? As soon as they as athletes start doing that, they get hammered over the stupidest stuff. And I just find, like, in Ottawa, there have been players who have pulled back, or even certain times of playoffs or whatever, because of the vitriol and the stuff that gets said. It's tough to get players to open up, and then you hammer them right away.
No, I totally agree with you. And we've had athletes on the show before, Jenny. We've had players from NWHL, Kaylee Fracken, Chelsea Layden, Zach Boychuk, the Twitter legend, has been on the show as well. And I think it depends. I remember talking to Zach about it too, and it really depends on the person. And he sees, like, some people will get like want to do the engagement and being active. But the one thing that you have to realize about athletes is just because they're not active doesn't mean they're active. And if that doesn't make sense, that means that just because they're not tweeting doesn't mean they're not checking it out all the time. They don't know what's going on. Because I know for a fact, in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, there are a lot of players that aren't on Twitter, but they have private accounts, and they know everything that's going on. And we'll tweet out something, and some players will text me, hey, why is that being tweeted right now? And I'm just like, how do you know? You're not on Twitter. He's like, I have a private account. I'm like, like, it's just it blows my mind. So athletes on social media is always going to be a topic I want to talk about on Popternative, because it is an interesting world. I think it's really interesting because even in, like, musicians on social media, they're a lot more active. They're touring every day and everything. That's more part of their, like, would you all agree that musicians versus athletes engaging is a lot more, it's a bigger part of their gig, right?
It is, but it's different. I mean, as an artist, as a musician, you already, by putting yourself out there and making music and writing songs, you're taking a stance and you're sharing a voice. As an athlete, you're sometimes not an individual. You're part of a bigger brand. You're part of an organization. You're part of the Montreal Canadiens, or you're part of the Edmonton Oilers, and it's so much more than just you as a single artist, as a musician or as a player. So I think that's something that you have to take into account as well.
No, that.
I think one of the things that drives me crazy about athletes goes back to what Jenny said. Ben will post a vine of their dog, and he's like, "Why are you on the ice right now? Why aren't you lifting?" Like,
it's my favorite one.
The thought of I'm 6'4" and I can't dunk. So let's talk. You want to talk about unathletic? The thought of being able to do what any of these athletes do on a nightly basis is so much. Like, Jenny, you're not going to be able to relate to this because you're an athlete. It's so mind-blowing. So to me, like, as a regular human being that's not, superhuman like professional athletes have to be, the concept, I would have to wake up and I would have to go to the gym and I would have to eat perfect and I would have to go back to the gym and then I would have to come have a perfect lunch and then I would have to go back to the gym. Like, you would have to, I think people, they work out on their own and they try to stay healthy and they realize they're nowhere near the level that a professional athlete would have to be. So your whole life just has to be, you're lifting, you're running, you're eating well, and then you're getting sleep. And that's all that it has. And it's like, come on, you're a person before you're an athlete.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, and Brent, you being a reporter and being with TSN, and first of all, I have to mention this because we've had a lot of TSN people on Popternative in the past, But I think if there was a TSN executive that ever watched the show, I think you would get a lot of brownie points because your sweater has the TSN logo right there.
So it's like I don't own many clothes that don't have the logo on it because they're all free and I'm cheap. So that's all I got.
Well, you can rub it in the Bill, James, Matthew Shinetti. You can rub it in all their faces that you were
My
like.
pants right now say TSN on them. I'm not joking.
Yeah, hey, 2.5 years ago, Jay Onrait and Dan O'Toole left, and they still use TSN Sharpies on the desk. So,
See? They got their own names on them.
You've just you've helped me segue to my next question because the thing that I find really interesting now is this intersections between pop culture and sports specifically. Now, Jenny Scrivens, you were on season 1 of the reality show Hockey Wives, which was on E. What was the?
No, not E. It was on W.
W, yes. And Pat Muldowney, you do a lot of work with the Jay and Dan podcast, correct?
I do.
And what I love about Jay and Dan, I've always loved about them, and it was actually like it was a pretty rough day when they announced they were leaving TSN. It was pretty rough.
I never heard of them.
Ooh.
All right, so settle down there. But no, they're really quirky, and they often refer to and have guests from the pop culture sphere, correct?
That's true. Yeah, they reach well beyond sports.
Yeah. Do you think that is something that, what do you think about that? We haven't had that a lot, and I think Jay and Dan were really credited, and Craig Button has mentioned this before. They were really, really good at pioneering this style of comedy with sports.
Yeah, and I can't speak to how it's received in Canada. Obviously, pretty well with the success and the fame that those two guys had up there. Excuse my language, but I feel like sports fans in this country are just such assholes where it's just like, talk to me about the hockey game. Talk to me about the hockey. Don't talk about anything else. And, Jay will make a Bieber joke and like all of a sudden people are like, oh, Bieber sucks. We're like, no, I know. It was just a joke, man. Like, chill. Like, at some point, sports became so serious. And for whatever reason, you look back at, the history or the attempted history of, comedic sports shows, and there isn't a long list. It doesn't seem to fly for whatever reason with sports fans. And, I'm hoping that at some point it starts to come around the corner.
Mm-hmm. Well, Brett, my question... Jen, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Pat and I were talking earlier about Katie Nolan coming to the NWHL and skating with the Riveters, and she filmed an episode of, it's Garbage Time, right?
Correct. Season 3 premieres tonight, midnight Eastern on FS1. Good.
Oh,
Garbage Time.
Great plug.
So she came and filmed an episode with the New York Riveters, and we loved it. I mean, we love any of that support, but she's hilarious, and she brought this, sarcasm and comedy to sports that I think intersected really well. And I think it's something that we can continue to do, and I think you're right, that comedy and sports doesn't naturally go hand in hand with some viewers, but I think that there's an avenue there.
So, but here's the thing. Are we worried then? The reason it doesn't translate, I think, is because then people don't take you seriously, right? Like Jay and Dan were very good reporters. They used to, work at TSN long before they were actually on the air doing their comedy bit, if you will, right? They're very good at actually knowing sports. But because of that and their comedy, nobody takes them seriously thinking they know sports. And so is that why it doesn't last?
Mm-hmm. But they struck the balance, I find. They didn't go too overboard.
Not in Canada, but I don't know. I've only seen skit parts now online in the U.S., and I don't know how much sports is actually talked anymore, Pat.
There's been a shift in the last 2 months of the format of the show, going from a highlight show. It's clearly completely departed from a traditional highlight show now. That I would say is probably more of, just the nature of the industry right now. And it's, how long can you try to out SportsCenter on ESPN before you try a new direction? But your point is well received, and will we ever, and I think to Jenny's point, what Katie Nolan is doing on Garbage Time right now, knock on wood, has been well received to this point. But, you see the success of, on the political and news side where Jon Stewart, Trevor Noah now, and The Daily Show, what's happened there, Stephen Colbert, they managed to bring news, politics, and comedy together and be successful and still be very well respected. And I think a lot of that is where Jon Stewart would go, 20 of his 24 minutes of content with jokes, but he'll also hammer home at that one very serious moment. And it's, trying to find that balance in sports, is tough.
Yeah. No, it is. And Jenny, I mentioned Hockey Wives quickly. And the one thing what I found really interesting about Hockey Wives is this was a show that came out, and I know for a fact a lot of my guy friends watched the show and were addicted to it. They were addicted. It was the talk of the town. And my question to you is: were you aware of the male demographic that was watching the show, and were you expecting that at all? Because there was the big hockey connection in there, right?
Yeah, I don't really know much about the demographics. I guess I know just from people tweeting at me or interacting with me on social media who follows, and for the most part, my experience has been with women. But I think that's interesting. I think that, male hockey fans would want that sort of insider's glimpse into, what Ben's daily life is or what any of the guys' daily life would be on the show. And I mean, that just kind of opens you up to more criticism too, I think. I think one of the biggest things I get is, I wasn't on the show all that much, but if someone were to see me on the show and they'd be like, okay, well, Jenny, what are you doing to make sure that Ben's prepared for the game tonight, is kind of what their view is. And I've seen a lot of feedback like that, and me being busy working and me doing all these things and not being able to make sure that Ben gets his pregame nap and gets that full meal before his game, something that I've seen criticism from.
Yeah, I'm a huge wrestling fan, huge WWE fan, and there's a reality show similar to Hockey Wives on E! Called Total Divas, which is about the female wrestlers and their life and their experiences. And that, I know for a fact, there were articles written about that, about how many, obviously, and the Nikki and Brie Bella said in interviews that the show was also, to get, a lot of women interested in, the wrestling and the behind the scenes, but a lot of males did watch it, right? So I always found that really, really interesting. And Brent, getting back to what we're talking about Jay and Dan and everything, it just reminded me, because I've asked a lot of, reporters this in the past, but what I find really interesting is, you're a reporter at Ottawa. You have over 20,000 followers on Twitter. There comes a point where, you're not an athlete, but you have become a brand, right? You're at TSN _Wally, right? You're a big deal. You have to treat yourself like a brand. You have to manage accounts like a brand. Even though you're, reporting about stories and anything, you're still a brand. You've become a brand, right?
Which is why I don't tweet a lot, and which is why we can be fired. And we've been told we can be fired if we screw up our Twitter accounts or Instagrams or whatever. So I don't like to tweet opinions, because all you do when you tweet an opinion is get hammered. So if you see my Twitter history or whatever it's called, you will see it just as Sidney Crosby's not playing, or somebody's in the lineup, or somebody like. I've tried to. One of my first people that ever tweeted at me said, "I just want to punch you in the face." I'm like, what?
Sorry, I didn't know you were checking your mentions.
No, and I blocked you. And so I replied to him, and I was like, great, thanks. And he's like, I just want to see if I could get a reaction. I'm like, I won't read Twitter after I anchor a SportsCenter show.
So Ian Mendes, I actually applaud Ian Mendes, because he actually, from TSN 1200, he replies to a lot of trolls.
He doesn't have any time.
But he does reply to them, though.
No, I know, and sometimes you do, but usually it's just not worth it. It's not. I've tried before, and you can't.
No, but I'm surprised he continues it. Like I follow
him because he doesn't have a life. Is what I'm trying to explain.
It just sucks you into this black hole. Like there's no way, there's no arguing with someone who doesn't make logical sense. You're not going to win that.
And I have anxiety issues. So like there was one time I remember reading Twitter during a commercial break anchoring, and they're like, it's amateur hour with TSN Wally, and it crushed me. And I'm like, I really didn't do anything that bad. So it's tough. Corey Warren, I remember one time was reading Twitter during hosting at an event, and it really got to him. It really affected him. Like, we read it. We just, some of us can handle it better than others.
It's everywhere. When I started working with the QMJHL, someone actually made a parody account of me, and was Pat, I know you were gonna laugh, but and some of the stuff was pretty funny. But
that's when you know you've made it.
Yeah, I guess. And people make fun of my last name a lot because it's like really long and Greek. But like it was like Peter Raviolitis or something, and it had like a photo of ravioli on it. Like it was childish. But I see where you're getting, and a lot of people, like in the hockey universe, Twitter accounts. There's parody accounts everywhere. Like you can't escape them. I don't know how many not Sidney Crosby accounts or Sidney Crosby's ego accounts there are. It's like, come on, be original. At least make like a, not Brian Rust account or something. Choose like a player that's not like, there's not going to be a lot of them.
So just to add to that, I don't know if you guys remember, but when Ben was traded from LA to Edmonton in January a few years ago,
Yep.
Do you remember this?
Yep. This is the cold issue?
People, the what, sorry?
Is it the weather issue?
The weather issue, yeah. So Ben was traded in January from LA to Edmonton. He's from Edmonton. We were so excited for this opportunity. I had been to Edmonton a number of times and loved it. And a few people went in, saw my Twitter and Instagram accounts, and they're public. And I know that. I opened myself up to this. But they scrolled through, found a few tweets and posts about me loving LA because I'm from LA, and spinned it into this. I think the headline was, Oilers trade great for Ben Scrivens, horrible for his wife, or something like that. And then went in to talk about how I hated cold weather, I hated Edmonton, I hated people in Edmonton, and how I didn't want to leave LA. And the author ended up saying, oh, it was a spoof, it was a comedy, it was tongue-in-cheek, but I know I scrolled through the comments section and I started getting really harassing tweets before I even saw the article, and it was, I don't want to say devastating because I think it was a good learning lesson for me, but it was a really tough pill to swallow because before Ben had even been to Edmonton, I was getting harassed online.
Yeah, that's why I said, like, Twitter it's hard. Like, I'm another one, and I don't know how well, Jenny, you guys know the Rhymers from Toronto, right? But James was getting it like crazy, and I know James pretty well, and I'm like, him and his wife were just getting killed on Twitter. It was tough to watch, and I don't understand. Like, do we not have better things to do with our lives than just berate people?
She launched a campaign too, didn't she? Tweet Sweet.
Yeah.
So April Reimer turned that into this wonderful platform called Tweet Sweet, where she went around schools in Ontario educating people about online safety protocol and how to stop bullying, how to identify bullying, and how to stand up to it. And I think that was wonderful, and that is absolutely one of the powerful things about social media. I mean, it's sad that you have to accept the negative and accept the trolls, if you will, but I think that there's a way to work around it, and I do believe in the power of it.
Yeah, and I never met James Reimer before, but I have to say, let alone hockey players, he just seems like one of the nicest guys out there.
I'm a non-Toronto fan. Like, I've grown always hating the Leafs. I'm not from Ottawa, but I hate the Leafs. James Reimer, and my son has a James Reimer jersey. That's what I can tell you. Like, he's one of the nicest guys you will ever meet. I'll tell you a funny story about James quickly. At the World Championships, where I got to actually meet Ben, I think it was Belarus, right, Jenny? Was Ben Belarus?
Yep. Yeah. That was right. Ben and James were the goalies there. Yeah.
The one before that in 2009, they had a training camp in Paris and then Prague, and then they went to Slovakia. So I had taken some pictures of the Team Canada practicing, and I'd given some to Jason Spetz, and I'm like, here's a USB, and you can just give it back to me. Like, I gave them to James of some I had of him. And it's like 3 or 4 days later, I'm like, James, you see those pictures yet? And he goes, no, I'll get back to you. I'm like, okay. So he comes back later and goes, those pictures are great. And I'm like, well, yeah. He goes, I thought they were of your trip to Paris. I'm like, no, they're for you.
That's really funny. He's such a sweet. I think the Reimers are. I think I can speak for Ben and me. They're some of our favorites, and we love them. We've kept in touch with them, and I spent a couple years with them in Toronto, and they're great people. I'm happy that they're in San Jose. I'm rooting for them.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah,
You're happy for them because they're in California, right? Because you wish you were still there. Warm. We get it.
Oh, you got me. You got me.
well done.
All right. Well, I think we're gonna wrap things up soon. I think it's almost past Brent's bedtime.
It's pretty late.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's still sunny in LA, guys. I mean, it's nice out here.
yeah.
We don't care about you.
You're like every bully on the internet, Brent.
And I have to say, this is I officially am inviting Ben Scrivens, JR Randall too on Popternative. Even though it's kind of a long shot, they're very busy people, but I think I have some insiders that can maybe pull some strings or at least ask. Because the one thing I've noticed, if you ask questions, the answer might be yes. It will most likely be no. But you have to ask the questions, right? That's how I guess. Like, I was like scared to ask James Devlin to come on because I was probably gonna be like, he's so busy, he's not gonna come on. It's like, I got in contact with him. Are you gonna come on? And he replies, "Sure, pal, would love to." I'm like, awesome, lesson learned. Now Brent's probably gonna say something about James Duffy, so go ahead.
Nope. I'll tell you after. He's just probably finishing up another book. That's the joke with him. In between intermissions, he writes a book.
All right. We're gonna wrap things up, but this is like the time where we have closing remarks. So Jenny, anything you want to plug? We thank you for coming on the show. I know you're really, really busy with a lot of stuff, so I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, I just want to say, thanks for having me on the show. I guess my closing remarks. For the NWHL, we're a really new league, and for us, we wouldn't be able to exist and get our players out in front of the media if it weren't for social media. We don't have broadcast deals. We don't have that power to connect people. And the only way we can do it is for free. So, when our players get on Twitter and social media, that's where we get that fan interaction. And it may be one fan at a time that our players are recruiting and interacting with and making fans for life. But that's the way that we're going to do it.
Great. That's really good. And yeah, I like I said, we're a big fan of the NWHL here at Popternative. Chelsea Layden came on the show, I think, not even a week before the season just started. She came on the show, and she was so excited to talk about everything.
She's awesome.
And Kaylee Fracken we've had on the show as well. We had Kaylee Fracken on Brent with Ian Mendez. That was the panel. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Kaylee is a Riveter now, and Chelsea was one of the first players to ever be traded in the NWHL.
So I have to bring it up. So I love the puns. Pat, you love the puns. The hockey puns are great puns.
Who doesn't love puns?
Yeah, exactly. So she was on the Connecticut Whale, right? So I messaged Kaylee and I said, Kaylee, imagine you're talking to a reporter and the reporter is like, so Kaylee, you're getting traded to the Riveters, and you have to move on, right? And like her reply would be, yeah, might as well.
Might as well.
Because she's on the way.
Oh man.
Oh, Pat.
This thing on? Hello?
She laughed really hard. Like she was like, oh god, that made my day. It was awesome. But I was afraid to make it public on Twitter, so I messaged her it. Because I wasn't sure how it would be taken in. But yeah.
I thought you were going to say, as a reporter, it would be tough, coming to the team, asking a woman, what does it feel like to be a whale? Like that would be
That's what I was thinking.
That would be a rough spot for a reporter.
How does it feel to be a whale?
I didn't think about that.
Good. It would be very offensive.
So Pat, it's always a busy time at Fox Sports, right?
No, not really. We don't really do much.
Always busy.
Hey, how soon do Jay and Dan actually stroll into work? Like
They
10
get
minutes
here
before?
at least 15 minutes before their show.
Okay. So, that's pretty early. Okay.
Yeah, it's been rough for them.
I anchored a show one time with Dan O'Toole. Only one show we've ever done together, and the set was here, and then the door to the exit was right over there. I swear, within 30 seconds, he was gone and out in his car, and I hadn't taken my mic off. I'm like, "Hi, Dan." Yeah.
I learned so quickly. I've never met two people that hate meetings more than Jay and Dan. They're like, you guys figure all this out, and then we'll just be there afterwards.
Yeah. And then they won't do what you tell them to anyway in the meeting. Right? So,
Which, like, why even have them there? That's why.
Yeah. But Pat, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I've been a big fan of your stuff for a long time, so I was really because I've been in contact with you for a while to get you on the show, and we were finally able to make it happen. So I'm really happy.
Yeah, it's we have a lot going on, but we don't have a lot of staff, I guess is what I say. So it's just wearing a lot of hats, especially on the social and digital side, where, similar to what Jenny said about the NWHL, it's hard to launch a network. We rely very heavily on our social and digital distribution right now. I'm sure, like Brent said, granted, FS Live doesn't air in Canada, but he has seen stuff that Jay and Dan have done. We put it on the web. We try to make it as accessible as possible. So it is a lot. It's day in and day out. And we're also trying to sustain a website and a digital presence as well, in addition to supporting the TV side. But it's fun, and I have the opportunity to meet a lot of great people and learn a lot from a lot of very smart people. And get to call somebody like Katie Nolan, again, whose show premieres tonight on FS1 at midnight Eastern. And clips will be available. Make sure you follow Garbage Time on Facebook and Twitter. And but it's been a learning experience. It's been a lot of fun. I'm trying to take this all the way up to midnight so we can send it straight into the show. Lead-in programming is very important, which is a thing I learned at FS1. So yeah, just everybody else should just stop being jerks on Twitter.
It's in your bio too.
It is, because you got to tell people to not be terrible these days, which is a bad thing.
Tweet.
Well, did you see the whole, Jenny, there was a golfer that tweeted that he was going to donate $500 every time he yeah, and people were literally, I don't want to get into it that much because it just got me so angry, and I tweeted some stuff, but I deleted it because I just wasn't worth it. But people were like, oh, I guess no money's going to be donated. I was like, really? Come on. Like, come on.
I'm not even surprised. I'm not surprised.
Goes unpunished, right?
Yeah.
Like, come on. That's just like, and I made a point, and I quote retweeted. I said, come on. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, people were like, don't respond. You're just fueling the fire, and you're just giving him what he wants. But it's like, I want it to get like that. I want that call out aspect of it, but it's true. They want the negative attention.
There was yesterday a buddy of mine, a friend of mine he missed the season last year. He was injured, got called up to the Chicago Cubs yesterday. And so I searched his name because I was waiting for the official announcement. And it's just people just tearing, oh, this guy again. Oh, he's garbage. Oh, why, like, yada, yada, yada. And then, so I clicked on one of the kids' bios because I paid too much attention to this. And he was a production assistant at another, like, TV network. And I'm like, you work in this industry. People are going to search your name and what you say before you get your next job. You are digging your own grave.
Yeah, but he thinks he's like, oh, I'm okay. I put in my Twitter bio, views are my own, opinions are my own.
Yeah, so I had that in my Twitter bio when I worked at ESPN and almost got fired twice for it. So
that's like saying no offense, but I mean, it's going to be offensive, and it's not really an excuse. So don't even say it. But I have to add to that. There's a big debate among players or athletes who look at their mentions and whether or not they read them. But there's a whole nother line of people who, sometimes they search their names or some people say I'm absolutely never searching my name on Twitter. And it extends to the spouses too. I've met some women along the way who, if their partner's having a really good or bad game, they might search and see, okay, what's someone saying about him? Or maybe they don't even understand the game all that well and they want someone's opinion on it. And it's just this horrible, terrible black hole. I've fallen into it a few times and it's awful. I mean, most of the stuff is bad. Sometimes it's good, but really, it's where people go to vent, and
it's hard to ignore it. Like Pat, you nailed it. Like it's hard to ignore it. Like it's just there, like a fly on the windshield. Like
and like Brent said, like when you check during the show, people are like, "Oh, this is just some dude. He's on TV. It doesn't matter."
Yeah,
it matters.
Yeah, no, like to Jenny's point, I've managed to talk to and know a few players' wives, and the stuff that they've had to just endure, and right, you're I'll say an innocent bystander, but you guys get called out and ripped apart, and you're supposed to be the one that's trying to console your husband and your partner, right? Like it's tough. I just don't understand why we need to be so miserable on social media to people.
Oh, it's terrible, and for me, it was especially,
which is why.
There is no accountability, and no one gets in trouble for it. I kind of hope, that starts to change as people make legitimate threats online. I think it's starting to change. But I think it was harder for me this year. People recognized that Ben and I were both goalies, and they thought it would be really fun to make some sort of joke about how, I was having a better game than my husband that night, and, I should be playing and Ben shouldn't. And those are horrible things to say. And maybe they think that I think it's funny, and it's terrible.
Yeah, people forget there's actually families, and not everybody is a super duper can block everything out type athlete. Like people take this stuff home. I can attest to it. I'm nowhere near an NHL athlete, but we get ripped apart as well, and it's tough to endure sometimes.
Tessa Bonham came on the show a couple weeks ago, and she was just livid about how destructive the bullying on social media. And she said something that was amazing, where she was like, if something about if you can't say it on to their face, don't put it on social media.
Yeah,
and if you could say it to their face, maybe reevaluate the kind of person that you are.
There's an excellent point. Drop the mic right there.
Yeah, we're always gonna like that. This always gets brought up, the negative aspect of social media.
Bye, Jenny.
So. Yeah, so this has been Popternative. Thank you all for coming on the show. Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Pat. You can catch previous episodes of Popternative on our YouTube page and our SoundCloud page. Thank you, and have a great night, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.